little cutting board here with a few of them. These are sort of my classic cheeses that we've been making for years now. We have the Cumberland. This was our first cheese, our Tome, and the Coppinger back here. This has definitely become one of the most popular cheeses that we make. And then the Dancing Fern, this is our first batch of 2021, and it's ready just in time for this week. Really excited about what the plans that we have for Dancing Fern. Now that Walden's in the picture, we've changed a little bit about that, so I'll talk about that as well. And then I have the Shakerag Blue, another most popular cheese that we make. So we're trying to really maximize, maximize the milk supply that we are able to put into those particular cheeses, being the unpasteurized, farmstead milk only, seasonal production cheeses that we've always made. And, you know, our customers are just asking for more and more and more of those. So we, you know, we're just trying to figure out ways to grow and add to our milk supply and, you know, and really respond as quickly as we can to, you know, this big shift in the landscape with specialty cheese and food service and, you know, gourmet specialty shops and just, you know, the whole spectrum. I feel like everybody's experiencing it. And so it's really exciting. So we are, you know, we're trying to make every one of our cheeses at least every other week. And so we try to make at least 3 to 4 batches of Cumberland every month, 3 to 4 batches of Coppinger every month, 2 batches of Dancing Fern a month, and at least 4 batches of Shakerag a month. And it's just becoming a little bit hard based on the milk supply that we have in order to keep that frequency up. But that's our goal. And so just to circle back, since I've talked a lot about Walden, and I don't have a Walden here with me today because we're just totally sold out of it. And but I was really glad I could just hold on to a wheel of Dancing Fern to have this to talk about a little bit. So the Walden, the idea behind the Walden really is to create a similar style to the Dancing Fern, which is based on the French Alpine cheese. That's a fairly famous cheese known as Reblochon, and the authentic raw milk French Reblochon is no longer available in the US, and that's been the case for many years now. So there hasn't really been, domestically speaking, a cheese that fits that same niche in the marketplace. And we, back in the early days of Nathan's trips, doing research about cheeses and trying to figure out what styles that we were going to make and what he was truly inspired by, he ran across some of this cheese when he was in France. And he was lucky enough to visit a couple of the producers in the Savoie region of France. And it really just stuck with him. This, you know, became one of the foundational goals of Sequatchie Cove Creamery, was to make a Reblochon style cheese, because we realized that there was a big sort of lack of that in our domestic market here in the US. So we set out to do that, and we did. And we've won more awards for the Dancing Fern than any other cheese. It's definitely one of the sort of most well-known cheeses, you know, as far as our brand. I think back in the early days, more people had heard of the name Dancing Fern than Sequatchie Cove Creamery. And so it really put us on the map. However, it's a very meticulous cheese. It's extremely problematic, and it can also have shelf life issues because it's a raw milk cheese. Being in the United States, it's got to be aged 60 days minimum before it can leave the facility. And so we've figured out how to do that. We figured out how to, you know, get it to that age, but try to maintain its maturity, its, you know, its state of ripeness as young as possible to, you know, maximize the shelf life that it can have. But being, it's a smaller format, but it's about a 20-ounce wheel. It's about this large, and versus the Walden is 7 ounces, so about a third of the size. So in, say, in a retail case, in a larger retail setting, the Dancing Fern would need to be cut and wrapped, you know, cut down into smaller pieces to be more of a retail size. And for that reason, it's a struggle to maintain the freshness. We just, really kind of had some issues in the case with cheese going downhill and aging out before they could sell it fast enough. And that's the main reason why I think a lot of the bigger retailers started to shy away from Dancing Fern, despite the popularity of it and sort of that, perfect niche that it fills in their case. Perishability is just an issue with it, and also just having to handle it to cut it down into that smaller format for sale. So we decided we needed to come up with a small format Reblochon style cheese that would be retail ready. So the 7-ounce size Walden, that idea was born. And what we started doing really was just when we'd make a batch of Dancing Fern, we had a certain number of small 7-ounce molds. So we would just make some really small size Dancing Ferns and sort of experimented with that and aging it out and, taste testing it at, week 1, week 2, week 3, and so on. And, we started to hit on something that we were really happy with. And so this would be around mid or late 2019. So we decided we would set out to really make a commitment, invest in a pasteurizer, which is a very expensive piece of equipment that we hadn't taken that on and gone in debt for another piece of equipment. But we realized that this small format cheese was going to sort of be the answer to a lot of the problems that we were currently experiencing, and also serve as a similar enough style that the demand and the interest in that cheese would sort of piggyback on the popularity and sort of the established awareness of Dancing Fern. So so that's where the idea for Walden came from, and it seems to be working pretty well. But we are taking our Dancing Fern production and changing it a little, because now that we have Walden and it's much more widely available and consistently available year round, we really want to dial in and get back to the most pure form of the raw milk Reblochon production that how we understand, it should be made, and for the quality of the cheese to really shine through and be the most optimum that it can be. So we are taking the production level down on Dancing Fern. Now that we aren't having to sort of rely on that cheese or lean on that cheese so much, take the pressure off of it a little bit, make smaller batches. And the big difference in the production is that those batches will just be made with morning milk. So the milk will not be cooled down. It will just go straight from the cows into the vat. And that's the really big secret that I've learned over the years. And I think Nathan now really thoroughly understands about Reblochon production. The most traditional, production of that cheese in France is that it's only made with morning milk. You don't cool down that milk. And the difference that it makes is phenomenal. We started just experimenting with, doing that and only that style of Dancing Fern production by the end of 2020. And the finished product is it's just like the best version of itself that you can possibly have. And it all has to do with, cooling down the milk and how that will select for certain spoilage organisms that will cause issues on the rind, off odors, deterioration, and just general lower quality with this particular style of cheese. But if you don't cool down the milk and you just use the milk straight from the udder right to the vat, you don't select for those same spoilage organisms. So Dancing Fern is now going to be made in smaller batches, and generally will just be less available. But with the addition of Walden, I don't think that we're really going to have too much of a blip on the radar as far as, just not being able to satisfy the customers who are looking for that style. So I'm really excited about what we're going to have to offer this year and the quality that we're going to see with the Dancing Fern, that I think we've just had sort of a frustrating experience over the years, just trying to get that cheese right. But trying to make too much of it all at once, and the certain things that we've had to do in order to make more dancing fern, really compromising the quality in the end. So that's my long story about dancing fern in Walden. And in terms of the other cheeses, I mentioned Shakerag. This, oh, whoops, it just broke. But now you can really see the fig leaf that's wrapped on the wheels, so it peels right off when you cut it into wedges. It comes right off, but the leaves are actually edible. And I kind of like nibbling on one a little bit, but for the most part, I think people remove them. But the Shakerags are most popular cheese, and therefore one of the most important products that we produce. We have, there's good things and bad things about this cheese because the blue cheese ages very slowly in cold temperature for the majority of its aging period. The Shakerag is actually waxed and then aged in a very cold temperature after its first couple of weeks. So it goes from the cave, which is around 50 degrees, 51 degrees, into a room that's more like 40 degrees or between 35 and 40, so that we can really slow down the progress of that cheese's ripening. And I think that really adds a lot more subtlety to the blue cheese flavor, keeps it from getting too ripe too quickly and, getting ammoniated and things like that, which happen more quickly in a warmer temperature. We're also able to hold the cheese for a long time without any risk of it aging out or going, over the hill. But the big limiting factor with the Shakerag is our availability of the fresh fig leaves. So we just last week ran out of our supply of fig leaves, which was the supply of leaves that I actually harvested the prior year. So last year's leaves we harvest, we steam them, which actually sort of sterilizes the leaf and softens it. And then we submerge all the leaves in buckets of Chattanooga whiskey. And they're preserved in the whiskey for, as long as we need them to be. They also stay in the refrigerator. So we have buckets and buckets of preserved leaves that are soaking in whiskey over the course of, at least 6 months or longer, depending on how fast we move through those leaves. So we just ran out of last year's leaves. And so that's really kind of our, a bottleneck for Shakerag. Once we don't have any leaves, we're continuing to make the cheese. It's aging. It's just going to be sitting longer in the wax. But in the meantime, the sales are going to be interrupted. Our availability is going to be interrupted. And it's normally around the 1st of June, or definitely by like mid to late June, where I really start ramping up my fig leaf harvest. And I have a whole network of fig tree owners. I have 40 trees myself, but they're all very young. So I still really rely on my my Chattanooga area fig leaf growers network that I've developed over the years, to go, on their property. Some of them harvest the leaves for me, but most of them just allow me to go harvest them myself. So, and that's my job. That is one of the only components that's really production oriented that I play an active role in, is getting those fig leaves and getting them while they're fresh and in really nice condition, and processing them and getting them into the whiskey as quickly as possible. This spring, however, in the month of April, at the very beginning of the month and again at the very end of April, we had 2 really hard freezes, and that has set the trees back in our whole region by quite a bit. I feel like the leaves on the trees, the buds were breaking, they were coming out, they got zapped by that first frost. It wasn't that big of a deal because it was still pretty early at that point. Then it happened again at the end of April. By that point, we'd had several 80-degree days over the course of the month of April. There was a lot of leaf growth present by the end of the month. Then that got zapped by the freeze, and that was a really bad, damaging event for fig trees in our area. Fig trees really won't be killed by something like that, but they'll just be set back. So Now the trees are just literally having to regenerate. New buds are breaking. It's just going to take time, at least I would say a month longer than usual for the leaves to develop to the place where, you know, I would normally be wanting to harvest them. So I'm looking at a pretty big setback with the timing of how fast I'll be able to accumulate enough leaves, soak them in the whiskey, and then start getting them on the cheeses. Usually I'm really like on time for the new cheese, the new Shakerags of the year to be starting to be ready like around the beginning of August. And now I'm hoping that it'll be the beginning of September at best. So that's just to create a little bit bigger gap for us between when we run out of the Shakerag that we currently have in inventory, and it's disappearing fast, and then, you know, having new cheese available again. So this summer, we're just going to have some gaps that are inevitable. We're also going to run out of Cumberland for a little while. That rarely happens. Cumberland being sort of the workhorse of our lineup. You know, we can always put milk into Cumberland. It's a simple make. It's generally less labor intensive in the aging room. It's something that we can age out for quite some time, you know, 6-7 months, and the cheese is still in excellent shape. I really have gotten to where right now I really prefer Cumberland that's very aged versus where we, you know, the minimum would be about 90 days, and then we'll take it all the way to 6 or 7 months if we need to. And it really is just better the more time it has. So being able to give our new production enough time to really mature, to be the best quality that it can be, there's just going to be some time there that we just won't have any cheese available. And it's just, you know, every year's different. I feel like production wise, you know, with our seasonal production being farmstead, we have environmental variations, we have animal health variations, we have, you know, milk quality variations, things that are just always a given. But the way it shakes out and the way, you know, our finished product is affected by that, and the availability is affected by that, seems to be, you know, something that we can never quite predict from one year to the next, because we just never really have the same year twice. And that's agriculture and that's farming. And so farmstead cheese making is just subject to many of those same variables that are out of our control. And so that's that just is kind of the year that I'm now can see, you know, out in front of me. But I am very confident that we will be able to really have plenty of availability by the fourth quarter, and that's seasonal wise. As far as sales go, that's the most important time of year to really have as much cheese available as possible. So it's, you know, new year, new problems. We're always just trying to do better and get smarter and anticipate things before they're upon us. But, you know, with the case with the Shakerag fig leaf thing that I've got going on, you know, there was just no way for us to foresee that, you know, we would have such an interruption in our ability to produce it. So in the meantime, we're going to have some other blue cheeses. We'll have the Bellamy Blue and a small amount of the Fredonia, which I don't have either one of those at this moment because they're out of stock, but we have new batches aging and they'll be ready in July, about the time that I probably run out of Shakerag. So it'll all balance out. It's, you know, we'll just do the best we can with what we have to work with. And in the meantime, you know, just pay attention to our milk quality, do the best we can with the production, and then bring in the milk that we can for making Walden, so we can have the most Walden and the most other farmstead cheeses for the holidays, and hopefully a little bit before that as well. The Coppinger, this cheese with the ash line, I said before, this one's become quite popular, really our number 2 cheese as far as production and sales goes. This one we're actually sitting on quite a bit of inventory, so it is one that I don't foresee running out of as quickly this summer, which is great because we do have such a good following on this. And it is a little bit of background on this cheese. We used to make a cheese called Coppinger that was a little bit different. It was more of a Swiss Alpine influenced style. The new Coppinger, which we developed this style in 2015, so it's been like this now for a while, but is more going in the direction of a French Alpine wash rind style. But it's a fairly firm cheese. I'm sitting out here where it's really warm and it's getting kind of sweaty and, you know, kind of soft. But in general, this is a pretty firm, pretty dry cheese as far as washed rind styles go. And we layer it with that black vegetable ash for two reasons. Really just because it's beautiful and it really is eye-catching, and I think that's part of the popularity of it. And it's also a nod to the traditional cheeses such as Morbier. Another one that I don't think is very highly available, if at all, in the United States. But Morbier was traditionally made with that ash line for more of a preservation technique. Nowadays, the ash line has a lot to do with cosmetic and appearance, but we just really like the story of the way that vegetable ash used to be used as a preservative to preserve the curd of the morning cheese make, so that the cheesemaker could come in the evening and use the second milking of the day to press that curd right on top of the ash and make one wheel out of the two morning and evening milkings, and with the ash dividing the two. And so that's kind of how that style came about and how that look came about. And factor that really kind of works in our favor, I think, with the Coppinger and helps set it apart as far as the ash goes. That vegetable ash is a pH neutralizer. So it raises the pH of the curd and sort of keeps the acidity from getting too strong on the Coppinger, which gives it a much more unique flavor. The Cumberland and the Coppinger are made with the same forms. They're the same size wheel. They're otherwise, you know, visually can be easy to mistake from each other. If you're just looking at two wheels wrapped side by side, especially if they're wrapped, they're really hard to tell apart. But they, flavor-wise, they're very, very different. The Cumberland, you have a lot more acidity. It's not really cheddar-like, but it gives you that pucker kind of back here, you know, like a sharp cheddar. But that is a very kind of prominent component of the flavor profile of Cumberland, is that acidity. And I think that's something that a lot of folks really respond to when they're looking for that kind of sharp cheese flavor. With the Coppinger, you have a much softer finish. You don't have that acidity. And I think that gives the Coppinger an overall, like, it's a savory and sort of a meaty flavor profile, but not the acidity. The lack of acidity just really brings out other qualities in the milk that I think the acidity in the Cumberland mask a little bit. So the pH of the curd being a little bit buffered by that ash, I think really does give it a unique quality beyond just visually. So that's something that I just like to explain, especially at the farmer's market, you know, when folks, and a lot of people look at that, they see that black line and they think, oh, it's got blue in it. But it is not blue. It's quite the opposite. It's, you know, something that is mellowing the flavor of the cheese and not adding, you know, extra bite to the finished product. So the other couple cheeses that I don't have here that we make, again, farmstead, strictly with our own milk and unpasteurized. I mentioned the Bellamy Blue. That cheese is a cave-aged blue. We rub the rind with smoked sea salt, and then we age that in the same cave with the Cumberland. They both have that natural rind. It's very similar in appearance. Kind of hard to see out here with this bright sun, but it's a mottled, sort of fuzzy white and gray, beautiful natural rind. Bellamy has a very similar quality to it, but just under the rind, it's been rubbed a couple times with the smoked sea salt. So it gives it a very nice hint, but not overly smoky flavor. And it's so creamy, so buttery, very dense. You can crumble it as long as it's very cold, but if it sits out and comes to room temperature, it's much more of like a spreadable consistency. It really melts in your mouth like butter. And so it's great. It's one of our most popular cheeses again, but it doesn't quite have the status of popularity as the Shakerag Blue. But I'm excited about that one coming back. I just didn't quite have any ready to share today. And then the other cheese that we make seasonally, that I believe I've talked about with you before, is the Grootly. And it's a larger format cheese, like a 25-pound wheel. They're about this large. And they're aged the better part of a year, at least 8 months. I think what we're now cutting into, the current batch that we're selling, is pretty much a whole year old. And it can, actually go quite, ways past that, maybe 2 years. We tend to not sit on the cheese that long, but we have been working with Counter Cheese Caves in Charleston, South Carolina, and they buy whole wheels from us and then age them out. So they have this like extra aged Grootly, and they have a really nice aging room, and I think they do an excellent job. Just maturing cheeses, so it's really fun to be able to sample some of their extra aged Grootly after they've been sitting on something that when we sold it to them, it was maybe 6 months old, and then it's a whole year and a half by the time that they sell it. So so I'm really excited about the Grootly as well, because that cheese being such a long aging period over the years, it's we have not really put a whole lot of milk into that cheese. We've maintained a very limited production because of the long learning curve and sort of just being able to understand the cheese that we produce this year, we really won't taste for so many months down the road. So it's taken us a really long time to get to where we feel very confident that putting milk into that cheese is going to yield, a really high quality finished product. So we're making more Grootly this year than ever before, and we've steadily been increasing the Grootly, I think, since like 2018, after we renovated our aging room, improved our climate control system. That also really helped give us the tools that we need in order to mature cheese for a really long time like that. So, so we'll have some Grootly, we'll have some Bellamy this summer. We'll be steadily making Walden every week. And then by the beginning of the fall, hopefully September, the Shakerag will be back, the Cumberland will be back, and we'll be really up and running for the second half of 2021. So I think that's basically all the cheeses that we're currently producing.
So Padgett, again, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Great cheeses, and I look forward to seeing you in the near future and hopefully in September.
Okay. Yeah, same here. Thanks, Michael.
All right.
Appreciate it. Okay. Bye.
All right. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.